Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 183 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, emallson, and joining me, we have. I'm trying to think of a good pun that combines tomato and anomaly, but I can't.
That's a tough one.
It's eluding me. We have anomaly who looks like he's inside a wildfire smoke cloud right now.
I'm running IRL Tindral progression, so like
Oh
we're lighting
yeah, there you
everything
go.
everything on fire around us. So no, it's my camera is breaking at like live as we speak. So it's great. Huge fan, huge fan. So
But yeah, speaking of Tindral prog, how was your raid this weekend, Mom?
we had a great raid, funnily enough. We got Smolderon down. So did a full Tuesday really good raid, did a full reclear up to Smolderon, got some pulls on him, along with doing probably not the sides of heroic, but like straight down the middle
Yeah.
heroic bosses. Just for like trinkets and stuff off Fire Axe. So no, really good. Got Tindral down, or got sorry, Smolderon down with about an hour left on a raid on Thursday. So it did take us like Tuesday progression, and then probably about 2.5, 3 hours on on Thursday, which is really, I mean, was really surprising. Like that's the type of fight where like it's very like we had a very low percentage wipe, like wipe to the enrage at like 10%, like pretty
Yeah.
early on, like within pull, like I think like 40 or 50, I
Wow.
want to say. And so like we were high. That was like last week. We were high on it. I was
Right.
like, cool, we're gonna come in Tuesday, kill it, get all day Thursday on Tindral. Didn't happen that way. I think it's just like there's just so many little things that go
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. There's also a lot of this is definitely a fight where you can get a kill and not really have earned it. Like we've talked about this before, right? Where you can kill a
Yeah.
boss but not really have earned the kill. Like you haven't really figured out how to deal with every mechanical overlap or stuff. And just kind of do it right one time and
Hmm.
get the kill, right?
Yeah.
But you can't replicate that, maybe. I did actually look because I saw you guys had killed it. You guys did really well on the amount of time that it took you to kill that boss.
Yeah.
So killing it even sooner would have been kind of wild. Like if you guys had killed that 2 hours sooner, it would have been crazy.
I've been what nuts, yeah. I mean, and to be fair, like it's funny, like I'll call myself out on this. Like we probably could have killed it a little bit sooner if I could live through any of the mechanics. I think I led coming out of coming out of our break on Thursday, I was leading in wave damage taken,
Ooh,
and also was leading in mist soaks in the intermission,
oh,
mist like
no,
orb soaks. So
yeah,
yeah, I played that fight just terribly. It was
yeah,
there was no good I can come from my play on that fight, but we killed it, which is despite me I think trying to hold the raid back. But no, got the kill. Didn't actually do any Tindral pulls. We actually killed it with an alt, or with a, sorry, not our typical tank combination.
yeah.
We killed it with sort of one of our subs, somebody subbing in, along with two new people progressing the fight for the first time on Thursday.
Well,
So
that's
like we had one
encouraging because we're
person in.
doing it tonight.
Yeah, right. Nice, yeah. So we killed it with one person who he's typically our rep paladin. He went prot to tank it, and then we had two new people, two new DPS players in. A warrior because we lost our only warrior. One of our tanks is a warrior, so we brought a warrior in for shout and stuff. Who had never progressed the fight before, and then we had a mage in for someone I forget.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's a fight that like there's a bunch of like it's like a combination of individual responsibility of like where to place yourself, and then
yeah,
there's like the general movement that you need everybody on the same page for how to move or where to place certain mechanics, because like
right.
yeah, like if you get a wave from like a random spot, like a random direction you're not expecting, it's like totally messed up. But
Yeah,
no, we had a really solid kill on it too. Killed it literally as the final like flames came up. Like I think it
nice.
died and the final flames still went off. But yeah, it was a good kill. So how was your week going?
It's going
I,
pretty well. We re-cleared everything on Friday and actually had an hour and a half left to work on Smolderon.
oh, nice.
So we did that. We last pull of the night, 15% wipe. We had almost everybody alive going into the final phase,
Hmm.
and just lost the healer, did not have a battle res, and someone had missed orbs in the previous intermission, right? So
Oh
the
yeah.
boss had 10% more damage on top of the stacking buff that he gets over time, right?
Yeah.
And so just like down a healer, boss is doing extra damage, and people just kind of start falling over throughout that phase,
Yeah.
and did not have very many people alive for the final dance, but 15%.
That's
Um,
solid.
we it's funny you brought up like a low percent wipe last week. Last week on Sunday we had a 30% wipe, like with 2.5 hours left in raid or something ridiculous, and then
Yeah.
never saw that low again.
Oh
Right?
no. Those are always the worst.
Yeah. But we did in between last Sunday and this Friday, we did some looking at how we were positioning things and how we were especially doing baits,
Yeah.
um, and what we need to do there. So we actually found a VOD that was extremely helpful for figuring out like what a functioning strategy for
Yeah.
placing those that like is actually explainable, and we can make, you know, we can say this is a bad position, this is a good position. So like got all that sorted out, and like our polls on Friday were just great. There's a few polls at the start where we're like getting used to the new strat,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and then it's just like I've got it pulled up on prog stats right now. I'm just gonna pull up. You can see the line just like zooming down over this
Oh,
90 minutes
nice.
of raid.
Oh, not,
Multiple
yeah.
low
That's
percent
awesome.
wipes. So very hopeful about tonight. Hoping it can be a quicker kill, which would give
Yeah.
us some time to work on Tindral. Um, Fingers crossed, but it's definitely not a boss that we can underestimate, right? Like
Oh yeah.
it could still eat
Yeah.
our
It's
lunch.
exactly. I think that's the interesting thing is like you can wipe early, like you can basically set yourself up for like essentially being like the slow wipes of like you do something stupid in like intermission one, like you miss an orb or two in intermission one.
Yeah,
Like you can get to intermission, like the final intermission, but like you might lose people along the way. And like it all stems from that first mistake. So
yeah,
yeah, I think on our, it's funny, on our kill, our Prat paladin died, and it's sort of a bit of a meme in the guild that pretend has to die for us to kill a boss. Him or the
uh
shaman are typically dead, and I did not die. So it's like the one pull I think all night that I didn't
huh.
die early, that we ended up killing it. So yeah, it was like one of those things where just like it ended up stars aligning and got it down. So it's a fun fight. I mean, I don't know if I want to go. I'm hoping we extend. I don't know if I want to go right back in
Yeah,
and do it again. But no, I think it's a solid fight. And it's one of those things where it get better with gear, right? You can more HP, makes it so you can eat a couple more mechanics. And just in general having more damage makes it like the
yeah,
check at the end not as bad. So
yeah.
but yeah, we are, it's funny, our bait strategy, we called it the pizza slice.
Uh-huh.
So you have to always fill in the pizza slice. So like the idea is like you basically break the room up into pizza slices, and like you drop your first set of baits to be like closer to the edge,
Yeah.
and then the second set we'd always try to put like close to the middle. And essentially like if there was any space in the old pizza slice, like range, get back there and
Rage
fill
fill
in
it
that
up.
pizza
Yeah.
slice. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was our that was our explanation of like how to do the drops, because like early on, I think last week we were like basically zooming across the room, but had like a
Yeah.
bunch of like inner circle space for
That
the
was
soak.
not
So
used. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
There's elements of that are similar to where we ended up, like
yep.
having the range kind of loop around the inside of previous fire, right? To
Okay,
take up that space. And like our first baits towards the edge, like you said, second baits filling in previous space around the inside. But also just like one of the things we did is we have a safe space. I put down a marker, and tornadoes are not allowed to be close to that.
gotcha.
And so that's the people with the helium absorbs, they are moving to that location. And one of the things that we realized is that basically the people that have the helium absorb, if they move to a set location, you are extremely likely to bait there. Like if they are
Yeah.
stacked, you are like there are 9 people there. You are 9 times as likely to bait fire there as at any individual tornado location.
Hmm.
So making sure that they are moving to a location that's good for a bait is important. So like putting those markers in places where like we want fire, so like always move to the outside edge pretty much,
Yeah.
and are all baiting fire next to old fire on the outside edge, and the tornadoes just stay away from it, and then they have a much easier time dodging like much better. Like we our last Sunday, like the stuff after that 30% wipe was just all like tornado deaths. Like that's
Yeah,
pretty much all it was. Like we got the orbs under control, but the tornado deaths, so that was our big
that's
thing.
nice. Yeah, no, yeah. I will say that this is the one fight where I hate blood DKs because our blood DK has a great, yeah, love the dude to death. Just cannot not hit Death Strike the moment the healing absorb goes on.
Yeah, that's
Like
been a
give us
learning
like
thing for me too.
just give us like half a second because like yeah so that
So
was the other thing to basically do is like we on whenever he was taking the soak basically the other people in the soak would basically stand almost underneath the boss,
yeah.
and so that as he was running out to death strike his circle was basically typically not going to like be
Right.
right on top of us. So
So
but yeah,
I'm
that was a fun learning experience.
I'm playing Blood right now. What I've actually ended up doing for this is I push Tombstone, which is an absorb for like half my health. AMS,
Hmm.
uh, Amp Blood, buff the AMS and the Tombstone, and then also the Fire Axe absorb shield trinket.
Oh, okay.
I just send it all, and then I
Yeah.
don't push Death Strike, and then I just don't need to drop the healing absorb. I
Yeah,
just don't
yeah.
take any damage.
Yeah, you just live the rest of it. Yeah.
There was actually a funny incident where like I did the first healing absorb in the first like tank slam in the phase. I hit all those buttons. I ran out. I dropped it. I used Wurnstone to come back. I'm just over there chilling out, hitting the boss, and like as the next tank slam is coming out, just a healing absorb appears underneath me.
You're like, oh yeah, that thing. I forgot about this. That is awesome. Yeah, yeah. That was one of the things. The healing absorbs. I don't. That is the one overlap of mechanics that I actually hate is like where you need priority healing along with having
Yeah,
random things to dodge, because like as a healer, I'm in my raid frames trying to get this healing absorb off, and then also trying to make sure I position myself where I can stand and cast for at least 4 or 5 seconds. It's just yeah, that stuff's super annoying, but yeah, it's a healing absorb raid, I guess. So there'll be many more of those mechanics, I'll say.
yeah, yeah. Tindral has one of those too. So like, how did your like hour on Tindral go, or did you even
So
pull it?
we didn't even pull it. So
Oh, you
we
didn't
actually
even
went
pull it.
back and because we had like the like our off tank, right, or an
Yeah.
alt tank in there, or non-main spec tank, I guess is the better way to put it. We actually went back and cleared the side boss of heroic.
Okay.
Got her back in and did that, and then sort of just broke early. I think we'd done like maybe 15 minutes early in the night. So yeah, by the time we would have gotten any like the meaningful progression we would have done would have just been to like maybe set up like P1 like general movement and get some like weak aura, like people just comfortable with the first maybe 30 seconds of the fight. So,
Right.
and we know that this is going to be a slog, so it's like let's not burn people out off the start. Let's
Yeah.
ease
There's.
into it next week. So
I started on our Tindral prep with one of the other officers this weekend, and just like phase one has a lot going on. Just three nice big instant wipe overlaps
yeah,
going on. It's great.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just it'll be fun to get into it and start to progress it a little bit. We can talk about they've made some changes to it, so it seems a little bit easier. But yeah, no, I'm excited to hopefully. I mean, to be fair, to actually extend. I don't want to kill Smolderon again, at least this soon. But we'll see what we do. So
Yeah, I don't think we're extending. So holidays are coming up next week. Sunday, which is normally one of our raid days, is Christmas Eve.
yeah,
For one thing, I don't think we're doing podcasts that day.
okay, cool. That's
I
fine.
mean, it's Christmas Eve, right?
I mean, a
Like,
holiday episode, but fair. That's
all
fair.
right, maybe we'll do a podcast next week. Um, but we're not raiding next week, that's for sure. A lot of people
Gotcha.
out. So we're rescheduling to Thursday. So we're raiding Thursday, Friday, and it's
Oh,
just
nice.
like we could. It's such a hard thing. Like we could extend, but we're gonna be in that situation where we're. I don't actually know if we're gonna have enough melee to do
Gotcha.
Tindral properly on Thursday. So
Fair
if we
enough.
extended, we might just be chain wiping to the very first overlap with the dispels plus the feathers to
Yeah.
just like having to have ranged on the feathers
Yeah.
and it not working.
God. Yeah, that's annoying. That's the annoying part. Luckily, I mean, funnily enough, luckily for us, I think we aren't missing anybody major like over the holidays, which is nice.
Nice.
So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Both like Christmas and New Year's fall, like Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve both fall on Sundays,
yeah,
which is one of our raid days. Very annoying. So that basically means like both of those days are kind of shot, so we have to reschedule both of them,
yeah,
and we're
yeah.
just
No,
like
that's
doing our best. So
yeah.
I don't think we're extending yet. I think it maybe a little bit depends on how clean Smolderon is as well. Like if we get in there and Smolderon just flops, then
Yeah.
we probably just reclear, because reclear this week took us like an hour and 15. It was
Oh,
very
really?
quick. Like most of our wipes were to Laradar. Like we opened it up with
Interesting.
almost one-shotting Laradar, and it just like wiped on it 6 or 7 times and then killed it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And everything else was one shot. So including
Interesting.
Volcaros this week, I did not wipe us on Volcaros.
No, look at you. You're learning. I love it. I love it. I love it. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Uh, but yeah, speaking of, you want to just jump around a little bit and hit the Tindral nerfs before we move back into some of the stuff about some of the new stuff, season discovery and so on.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can head that way. Yeah. So there was a handful, a number of Tindral nerfs. So we'll get to see these. We didn't. To be fair, didn't these went in? I think with the reset this week. So we would have
Yeah,
never pulled this with it. But a couple of big things, I think. So first up is the fire beam. The number of spawns per pulse has been reduced from 8 to 6. So this essentially is the big fire circle, right, that spits out the beams that ride in a specific
right.
direction. There's only going to be 6 of those beams versus 8, so just less beams to basically set up and dodge, which is really nice. Um, Fiery growth duration has been increased to 20 seconds from 16 seconds, only on mythic difficulty. Fiery growth is
Dispel dot.
the spell dot, yeah. So you
Yep,
have a little bit more time to get all. There's 5 of them or 4 of them on mythic. I
four of
forget.
them. Four of them.
4, 4 to get done, which is good. Lingering cinder duration reduced to 2 seconds, was 3 seconds. So that's the debuff that's left on the raid after you do the spell, right? So you can't
I
double
think so.
dispel.
Yeah, yeah.
So just you get to dispel a little bit quicker. Pulsing heat damage reduced by 33%, which is I think the raid damage in intermission.
That might
I
be the. Is that
feel like I should actually know
the
these abilities.
tranquility? That might be the tranquility one.
Gotcha.
I'm not
Okay.
sure though. I think the intermission one is called supernova, but I'm not sure.
Gotcha. Okay. But in any event, 33% less overall raid damage just helps healing. Fiery Vines had their health reduced by 7% on mythic difficulty. Um, and which is nice. And then a couple of just performance changes,
Well,
which is good for server delay. So
did you see the Skarn strat for this boss?
no, what's the scar strat?
So there was a guild, Rain, that was doing this strat, where
Okay.
they had 8 tanks, 7 or 8 tanks.
Oh, the 7 tank strat. Yes, I did see
Yeah,
this. Yes,
and
yes.
we're just like, tanks don't get targeted by most of the mechanics, so you just like keep going. You
Yeah.
just like have them do feathers, and they don't get rooted, so the roots are easier to kill. There's actually a fun little interaction there where target, not capping, right? Like most people don't have capped AoE, but they have like their AoE splits, right?
Right.
Between
Yeah.
targets.
Reduce. Yeah.
If you don't get as many roots, you can kill the remaining roots even faster, which makes it
Right.
easier. So by having 7 tanks and getting 5 fewer roots,
That is awesome. I did somebody linked me a VOD of like, yeah, the
yeah.
7 tank strat. But yeah, no,
So
that's so funny.
they basically fix that by making entangling roots target. If you have more than 2 tanks, it targets like, all but 2 of them at random.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
so
We can't do that anymore. Darn it, man. Fun detected.
I wouldn't call that one fun, but
That's true. Yeah, true. We were, I think, yeah, one of our raid lead was like, we're not doing this regardless. Like, not having 7 or 8 tanks come in.
yeah.
People respect. So,
If if we are running into like a raid night where we just don't have enough melee, I could see us doing it for funsies. Just like, night after Christmas, hop on 8 tanks, 5 healers, just fucking yeet
just just go with it. That's so funny. Oh man, did you see the other exploit this week? I don't think I put this in the notes, but there's a quest item bug.
Okay.
It's a water bucket from I think it's a quest in like the new zone that you can use it on boss mod, specifically Tindral. And somebody used it on Tindral, and the boss went from 100% to 20% instantly.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's percentage based too. So I think they did it in like an LFR raid. Like the VOD I had was not mythic. I think it was like
Yeah.
LFR heroic or something. But yeah, so that'll be fixed by Tuesday. But a bunch of my guild were like, all right, let's sign in. Let's get a couple quick kills. Like we're not doing this. We're not doing this. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah,
Yeah.
no,
I mean,
these are. Oh, sorry.
these nerfs seem good, right? Like they
Yeah,
already hit the seeds a little bit. That's one of the other nerfs I don't think we
I was
talked
like
about.
last
It was
week or
like
the week
last week,
before. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah. And so they reduced the number of seeds, reducing the number of fire beams. I don't know how many people have like seriously looked at the overlaps in this encounter, but there are multiple overlaps where like the thing that you are dealing with is the fact that you are rooted and there's a fire beam bearing down on you.
yeah, yeah.
And so reducing the number of fire beams makes it possible to do things like moving the boss, moving where the roots are going to be so that there are no fire beams that they're going to,
Yeah,
right?
which is nice, which is helpful, we'll say.
Right.
Helpful.
So
So,
fingers crossed. Boss. I mean, we'll see how it is, right? Like holidays
I
upcoming. I feel like a lot of people's prog is going to kind of sort of stall, but then again, a lot of people's prog doesn't overlap with actual Christmas or
yeah,
actual New Year's because, as I was saying before, those are Sunday, Monday, and not as many people raid those days.
exactly. And you get like that's the worst part about this time of year is like you get screwed back to back weeks just
Yeah.
because if it's New Year's Eve on a Sunday, it's gonna be or sorry, if it's Christmas Eve on a Sunday, it's gonna be New Year's Eve on a Sunday too.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
well, cool. Well, yeah, those are some of the Tindral nerfs. So I'm excited to get into it. We'll see how it feels. I mean,
Yeah.
this is still, second hardest boss in the instance, so it's like 200-ish pulls. So we're in for a slog, 150 or something. So we'll be
200 might be underselling it.
yeah, well, yeah, I think, we just killed, Smolderon in like, I don't know, like 100 pulls. So like we're pretty good at the game. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, we'll see. It'll definitely be the long boss. So for the next couple of weeks, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Um, but cool. I guess we circle back, get back into some of the news over that we sort of missed over the past, we'll say 2 or so weeks. So, Blizzard, a little bit of not retail action here. Blizzard did release statistics, some official statistics on Season of Discovery. So if you aren't familiar with Season of Discovery, it's sort of their view or their version of Classic Plus, right? It's
Yep.
level capped to 25. You get new abilities in the form of runes across the classes. Um, I will say that I have been playing a lot of this. So I have my mage is 25, been grinding SFK. Haven't done the raid yet. I think we're actually going to try and do it tonight with some of my buddies. But it's funny. It's gotten a lot of people back into the game
Yeah.
of my friends that I wouldn't expect to come back to WoW, right? Like it's one of those things where like WoW is a pretty much unknown quantity. So it's just like
Yeah.
they're like, "How's it going?" And I'm like, "It's WoW still." Like they asked about the new expansion. So I'm like, "Still WoW. Still, if you don't like that, it's still the same game." But no, they came back, and it's been fun. But yeah, they basically some of these statistics. So 4.5 million characters created since this was launched the 30th, so in the first 2 weeks, which is like wild to me.
This is
Doesn't
the
mean there's
part like some of these there's the Twitter meme like, you know, 4.2 million of those are Timmy creating and
yeah,
deleting the character over and over again to try and make the random number generator work in his favor and should not have been counted.
exactly, exactly.
But it's still a lot of characters.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's fun. I mean it's been a blast to play. I've been having a blast playing it. The rune system is really cool. I'm playing a mage, so I can heal my party. It does so there's a visual bug with the mage heal, which I love this stuff, which is like the mage heal whenever you actually heal someone, there's an auto animation that triggers. So like it's like when you cast a spell, like at the end of that spell you'll get and you have a healing thing up, do like an additional like small minor animation, but that you've actually healed somebody. Mages have, so you can heal somebody, but they also get an ability that puts like a fire trail on the ground that basically acts as a dot. So if you put down that fire trail as your tank pulls a ton of like mobs, and then you put your like healing thing up, you just spam that animation over and over again. And on an undead female, it's like they just raise their hand and their hand glows white for a second. But it triggers every time you heal. So it's literally like you just like spam, like you're like cutting off the animation halfway through if it's like too many mobs. So it's
That's
great.
funny.
There's a trinket in Cataclysm that you could get that did a very similar thing. It actually triggered off any hot ticks. And I played a druid,
Yep.
and a druid in tree form. When you did it, you would like stomp your feet was the animation for that. So just like
So
you're
you
like
would
banging
just
your head as a big tree. It was so good. Um, but yeah, no, it's been fun. So punch the stats. I think another interesting fact is like there's 12 runes on the classes. Less than 0.1% of all characters have collected all 12 runes.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, my rogue, I'm a whole level 14, right? Like I've got
nice.
2 runes. There's the one that they give
Joe.
you for free at level 2 or whatever. And
Yep, yep,
then
yep.
there's one that I just like figured out how to do. Like some of these are not very hard to find, right?
Yeah.
So I found the mutilate rune. Do not
Oh.
have poisons yet to actually make good use of it, but you know, poisons level 15.
Hey, look, you're
Close.
close. You're there.
Close.
You're there. Yeah, I unfortunately have looked up how to get every mage rune because some of them I'm just not about to figure out. Like I just got the
I
mass regeneration rune. I
yeah.
had to go to Duskwood, killing level 28, 29 mobs is level 25 in a
Yeah.
crypt.
Yeah.
Not fun.
Yeah.
Zero fun was had getting that one.
I need
So,
to. I was thinking about trying to get a Ridgefire Chasm run later today,
oh,
and
nice.
since I'm playing the rogue, I was like, maybe I'll look up where to get the tank runs and see if those are possible to get and then go tank RFC
Yeah.
rather than trying to be, you know, yet another DPS trying to get into an RFC run.
Oh yeah. I will say that though, like I like it's funny because of the level squish and like so many people being close together, like
Yeah,
I we did like 5 SFK runs last night, just chained them back to back with like a new person each time. And people are just like sitting outside the instance to get in
oh,
there.
okay.
So
I
like
mean,
it's
maybe
probably
maybe I'll
even as
try
a
actually
DPS,
DPSing it.
it's like there people are always at least I'm on Wild Growth, I want to say.
Yeah,
So
I'm
one of the
on.
PV.
I don't know, alone.
Okay, yeah, one of the yeah, I'm on the PV servers. So
Yeah, we're on a PvP server, which was not my
gotcha.
first pick, but you know, that's where the guild was going.
Yeah, I have a bunch of like my buddy. Like that's the one thing that my friends will like. If I get ganked, like because we used to do it. Like the problem
Yeah,
is like in a Virginal Classic, like we were the ones as Alliance going to Crossroads, like having somebody fake AFK on the road, like sit down and fake AFK, so someone just hits them randomly, and then like a bunch of stealth people come out and kill that person,
yeah,
and then camp their body for 4 hours.
yeah.
So like we know that we don't want that to happen to us. So we've heard that pain.
Yes, yes, yeah. My people from my guild are actually doing like BFD raids. Like I think
Oh,
they've done it
nice.
like 3 or 4 times now. It's
Nice. Yeah,
and
I'm
they're
excited.
like,
We're
yeah,
gonna try tonight.
we keep having to pug people, and they keep getting like they just win the need rolls, and it's like,
Yeah,
can one of you other people in the guild please finish leveling up so we can stop giving loot to randos?
that's so funny. I forgot how exciting that is, by the way. Like the need rolls, like we were doing SFK, and if you're not familiar with Classic, like bosses might have like a blue item on their loot table, but it's a low drop chance. So like you might kill the boss 5 times and see some random greens, and then like you'll finally see that blue item you want. So one of the bosses
Right.
drops a weapon that my buddy wanted, and there was another warrior in the group, and so they went to a roll off.
Yeah.
Look at the list. He rolled or the other guy rolled a 97, and I was like, oh man, that stinks. But then look down below, he rolled a 98. Freaking won it by 1 point, dude. I'm like freaking out in like Discord. I'm like, oh my god.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, it was it's like, yeah, that type of stuff is like it's funny. It's so exciting. For like just blue items. So yeah, it was a
Yeah.
little bit of joy, a little bit of
Yeah.
fun back in the game. So well, cool. Well, that's our sort of season discovery classic plus moment. Moving on, a couple of maybe not specific things with WoW, but some of our other, we'll say, outside like websites and tools that are out there. So, Warcraft Logs, which you're familiar with, released I won't be mean about this. Released essentially an aggregation site, basically providing aggregate data across all the different specs, showing you like what popular talents are, what popular stat lines are. Also, I think you can filter this by boss. You can see like, or by raid, and I think Mythic Plus too, right? And you can see by boss what gear people are wearing, and a bunch of other stats. Um, I will say, and I'll say this on the podcast, I gave, Argo a little bit of grief when he posted the beta for us that,
Yep.
why are you providing like letter rankings? Like, why? I just hate it, but
Yeah,
I
I
get
mean,
it.
it's the same reason that
It's the
Wowhead has
SEO.
the tier. It's the same reason that Wowhead
It's
has the tier list pages guide. They're not
exactly.
guides, but like the tier list news posts and stuff like that. It's that people search for it.
Exactly. It's like from a building a website that you want people to visit, don't 100% would do that if I was in that business. It's
Yeah,
just like from a personal point of view, it's just like oh man, like the statistical stuff. I will say your version probably slightly better than sub creation, right? You're probably doing a little bit using a little bit more data than like maybe the random top 200 runs that people are doing in Mythic Plus. Like so
there's so I did a lot of the statistics work on the back end for this, and it's not very complicated statistics. It's mostly like we have a lot of runs that are not structured in a way that is
yeah.
designed for this. So like getting the data from one form into a form that we could use for this was mostly what I worked on. So there's a lot of data that goes into this, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, but it is also like it's still an aggregation site. Um, the thing that I do like this kind of my line for this is everything that shows up on here is basically going to be good enough, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to run into a situation where you go here and you get a talent tree and that talent tree just sucks. And it's a
Exactly.
little bit just like relying on the wisdom of the crowds, right? Like if 70% of people use a talent build, it cannot be that bad. It may not be the best, but it cannot be that bad. And so that's kind of like the idea. And so it is, I will say, it is better than that other three leather
Yeah.
site that was getting a lot of advertising during the race to world first.
I would
Um,
agree. I would agree. I'm there with you.
yeah, so it's a bit better than that one. Bit more detail, bit
I
bit
will say, no, that is actually the one thing. So I know I was kind of being mean at the start of this, but no,
yeah.
I will say like statistically, like, or the number of different data points you have and the fact that you sort of, what you do, what is shown on this. I say you specifically, like you've built
Yeah.
this by yourself,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
what
Single-handedly, by the way. Yeah, no.
no, but what's up there? I think it is really good in terms of like the amount of information you show. I just, to be fair, the first, like when it clicked the link, it's just, I saw the letter ranking and I was like, Argo,
Yeah.
bud, come on, bud, come on.
It's
But I think the rest of the data is like super good, like honestly.
yeah,
So
the tier lists are honestly there like we know intellectually that they exist because people want to see them, right? They're junk
oh
food.
yeah,
People want to see them. People search for them. They literally type into Google like wow DPS tier list, and so we want to just give them a thing that then funnels them into things that are actually useful,
yep,
right? Like you click on anything in the tier list and it takes you to like here's the build and talents, and like you want to see what gear people are using, what the weapons and the trinkets are that people are using, what the talent builds are, what the variations are on the talent builds. Talent builds is actually a big thing that I wish we had like infinite time and resources so I could have done a lot more detailed stuff on talent builds
yeah,
because there's so much going on with talent builds. And I did a bunch of stuff that did not end up showing up here because it was just too complicated
yeah,
to scale up, basically,
gotcha.
and guarantee that the data was going to actually produce something that was, that hit that good enough bar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but there is a lot more that I would love to go back and do for talent builds in particular. That's the one. Like gear is kind of whatever. There's a lot of just like wearing high eye level stuff with decent stats.
Right,
But
yeah,
talent builds is where there's like a lot of interesting stuff around like what you know points you can flex around and stuff like that. So that's that's where I want to go back and work on it. Yeah.
nice,
So
nice.
we released this on Thursday.
Yep.
Is it Thursday? Yeah, Thursday. We were trying. We've been trying to get this the original the original plan or goal was to get this out
Yeah.
with the release of Emirdrasil, and then Season of Discovery got announced, and we knew that was not going to happen.
Pulled a couple of resources away from that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Nice.
It was fun. Reception's been uh well, reception's been good except for the kind of like high end theory and guide writer people
Yeah, which I
who
mean, you're
are
never gonna.
the same frustration that you were kind of expressing, that is like it's another aggregator site, and yeah, it's another aggregator site.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but there and like I will say that, but in the same breath, be like, I still do this for other games. Like I still, if
Yeah,
I'm playing PoE, I'm like build tier list. Like, what's the best build to play in Path of
yeah, and
Exile or
that's
like whatever other game it is.
I'm
So
also
yeah,
like one of those like higher end theory people, right? Like I
yeah,
also am like kind of frustrated by aggregator sites, but that's also kind of motivating us on the Warcraft Logs team to be like, okay, we've got to make sure that this data that we're presenting like passes, our bar, that we're like, okay, I can live with this being the recommendation that shows up on our website.
gotcha. Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. Um, but cool. Yeah, so that is it's archon.gg, right? Is the
Yep,
site? Yeah.
archon.gg.
Um, cool. And then in terms of other tools that have released some new features, Lorrgs.io, which if you're not familiar with Lorrgs, it's essentially a timeline site. They take top HPS or top DPS logs from a fight, a specific boss fight. And show you how the individual has used their cooldowns. So for healing, it's when they, added different cooldowns, maybe when they used or when they maybe got a specific buff like Innervate. They also can show when people get power infusion if they're getting that for their runs. So it's a really good site essentially to set up or mirror your cooldowns for what you would want to see on a fight or what you might use on a fight, whether the top HPS or DPS player is doing. And what they've released is essentially the ability to export the cooldowns into like a nice little ERT note. So you can basically have a nice little ERT note that triggers when you want to hit certain spells or use certain abilities and cooldowns. So that's a very nice new feature to basically pull out, we'll say, an easier way of like reminding yourself to use cooldowns. So it's funny. I really, so I use this site a lot, funnily enough, in terms of like getting into more details of our like healing cooldown setup, which is like good to know. Like once I've set, excuse me, cooldowns, it's like, okay, some minor stuff for myself or maybe minor stuff for like our disc priests. I'll pull, like, now we can pull this and they can set up like, hey, when do the typical disc priest ramp, right?
Yeah,
And add that in. So
that's
this is an awesome, nice little feature. So
yeah, I use this when we're looking at healing cooldowns, because our healing comps are often not like, it's hard for our guild right now to find identical healing comps because we are not running it. We are about as far off meta as we've ever been.
nice,
We don't
nice.
have a holy paladin. We don't have a disc priest. So like
Yeah,
automatically, like basically every kill has one or both of those. So when we're running around with like Mistweaver, Preservation Evoker, Holy Priest, Resto Druid, like nobody's
what do
killing it
you
with
do?
that.
Yeah,
So going in, like I have to, kind of put together an amalgamation cooldown set. And I use Lorrgs to kind of get an idea of like, okay, is there a clear spot where like people are using Dream Breath? Dream Breath is probably the hardest one to do because it's also got the positioning thing. Like people have to be
yeah,
stacked. It has to be safe for the evoker to use it, right? Like it's hard to put a Dream Breath on Laradar during the where you're standing in the
yeah,
tree. Like it's very dangerous. Yeah.
exactly.
Similarly with like Smolderon, there's only certain spots that you can even use not Dream Breath, Dream Flight. Um,
Yeah,
and so like figuring out like, okay, what are the safe spots to even use this ability, right? And then
I'm
put that
not gonna get
together.
myself killed.
So I'm
Yeah.
not getting our invokers killed.
No, yeah, no, it's funny. And we, luckily for us, we are literally the most on meta we've been in like forever. So it's
Yeah.
literally like we have two priests, a paladin, me, and then we also have a preservation evoker if needed. So um but no, yeah, it's a really cool site. Lorgs in general is good, and now that you can export stuff, even better. Um even better. So um Cool. All right, moving on a little bit here. Oh gosh, man, I didn't even look at the time. We have a
We're
lot to cover. We are behind, so we're gonna rapid fire. We're gonna rapid
rapid
fire some of this
fire.
other, we're gonna rapid fire some of this other stuff here. So Echo has released their weak auras. Liquid had released theirs, I think probably a week or two ago. Echo has released their weak aura pack via Echo Raid Tools, which is their add-on, which sort of mimics a little bit of what is it, Method Raid Tools does, or whoever. ERT now.
Yeah.
It was
It's it's
Exodus. Now
it's
it's
it's method now. So there's
yeah.
apparently I guess I knew at one point that there's Echo Raid tools and I had just forgotten.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, but yeah, so Echo Ray Tools updated for the raid, the minstrel raid. So grab their weak auras and their add-on and you can use it there. So cool. So you mentioned this at the start of the podcast, but there was a interview last week with Ian Hazakosis and the secret man himself, Jeremy Fiesel. And so with the community council, so the community council sort of, I guess, I watched the video. They said like, almost like a town hall, sort of
Mhm.
like call with Ian and Jeremy, and ask a bunch of questions. To be completely fair, like you said, there's some interesting stuff in here. I found it entirely boring, except for the last question,
Okay.
or really second to last question.
Okay.
But so maybe I'll let you, if there was like something specific you wanted to pull out of here,
Yeah,
because I have the one thing for me. So
there's like a couple things and maybe this overlaps, right? Like
yeah,
so I think that a couple of things that they brought up that were interesting. So they talk about loot in War Within. They talk about delves and the rewards and the cap on the rewards being heroic because of organizational things.
hmm
But they also talk a little bit about Mythic Plus rewards, and like basically their philosophy on bad luck protection there and like tuning there, right? Like if you're doing 30 runs and you don't get a trinket, they're okay with it if the trinket is a percent better kind of deal, right? Like if the one trinket is like 25% better than everything else, then they see that as a trinket tuning problem and they need to tone down the trinket or tune up other trinkets. But if it's
gotcha.
just like, you know, a percent ahead, then that kind of washes out because there's other people that are searching for another item from another dungeon that haven't gotten it that are also just like losing a percent off of their chest piece or their helmet, you know, kind of deal. And so, as someone that, you know, took 30 something runs to get a weapon this tier and never got one to drop until I finally got one from my vault, um, our first pulls of Mythic Smolderon, I'm using a normal agility pole arm from Fyrak on a fucking Blood Decay, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
really, really down bad. Um, so like
That's awful, by the way.
on the one hand, like I understand that kind of philosophy. On the other hand, come on, it's
Yeah,
so many runs.
that is true. Yeah, I think, and the thing with that, I guess, is like you, there are certain items. Like I guess the question there is like how do you trigger that sort of protection when there might be multiple items you want? Like you were
Yeah,
specifically looking for a weapon, but
right.
like let's say a boss drops like a trinket and like a belt, and so
Yeah,
it's like how do you know which one needs the protection versus not? And
yeah.
so
And there's
yeah,
like
that's the
there
tough part.
there's still an element of the core issues with personal loot that like it depends on who's in your group, how easy an item it is to get, right?
Yeah,
Like it's kind of hard to stack a group for two-handed strength weapons, right? You're looking for rep paladins, warriors, other death knights,
yeah,
and that's it.
yeah. Or and like yeah, if you want to like fully stack, you'll just need like a
You do
paladin
the holy
healer.
paladin. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that can trade it to you. So
So and so that's the kind of thing where like you some items are just a lot easier to get still with personal loot. It's not as big of a problem when you can just chain farm it in Mythic Plus.
yeah,
It is still kind of frustrating. Like we did a lot of runs where we had 4 people in the group that could get the two-handed sword, trade it, and never saw one drop, which is just somehow sometimes that's what the dice are, right?
yeah. Yeah, that is rough. Yeah, very similar to my fall runs, which I don't know if I was at 30, but I definitely did about 20 or so fall runs before I got the pants, which was an experience. So, um, well, cool. Anything else from the interview that
There
sort of
was
stood out?
we got some more info about Warbound gear, and I in particular wanted to call attention to the example eye level that they used.
Yeah.
So there the question was about like difference between Warbound and account bound, and fundamentally it is account bound gear doesn't ever bind to a character. It's permanently account bound. Warbound, as soon as you equip it on a character, it becomes bound to that character.
Hmm.
The other thing is Warbound is higher eye level. The example they use is that if you are running, they say high keys, if you're running 20s, right?
Yeah.
The current end of dungeon drop is 470. And their example of what a Warbound item would drop at is 460, which is basically like the next upgrade track below Hero, whatever that
That-
one's called,
Yeah.
the champion track or whatever.
Champion. Yeah. Hmm.
I don't think I think that's like slightly below where hero track starts, but still it's like if I could get a bunch of mage gear, from doing dungeons and send it to my mage, um
Yeah.
that would be kind of nice, not having to start from like season 1 gear on my mage.
Oh yeah. No, that's the funny. That was the biggest thing I thought about that I wanted to bring up here was yeah, it's just it's dropping it a lot. The Warbound gear is going to drop a lot higher than even I thought, right? Like I
Yeah,
thought maybe it was like a mythic to like normal gap, but if it's only like
right.
the single track below, if they sort of keep that going into
Yeah,
the War Within, the upgrade tracks, then no, that's awesome, right? I think the random nature of it is kind of going to be maybe where people slightly get a little bit of frustration, but I think at the end of the day, if it's just a bonus piece of loot that you might
yeah,
or might not equip, I think as long as you can disenchant it, I'm fine with that, right? Like as long as
yeah,
there's a way for you to get rid of it, and it's not just like a piece of gear that takes up space, you just like
yeah.
randomly
I mean,
delete it.
worst case you can vendor it, right?
That's true. That's true. Get some gold. That's
Yeah.
fair. That's fair.
It is. I do wonder if what they're going for here. Like some people remember kind of the heyday of alt rating in op, Throne of Thunder era where gearing was like pretty easy. You could do your Isle of Thunder dailies and stuff and get good gear, and then go and do raids and then just like clear the raid on a bunch of characters, or
Yeah.
at least on normal, right? You could do normal on a bunch of characters, and you can see that play out again in Wrath and play out again in Black Fathom Deeps, and I think maybe that's something they are interested in reproducing in retail,
Yeah.
because it is kind of a slog to gear up all
Yeah.
those characters through like the world quest kind of tier of gear.
Oh yeah.
As
And all
soon
the
as,
different sources that retail has too, like with craft. Like I know they want to make crafting a thing, but it's like you gotta get craft stuff. You have to get crafting mats and like crests for it, and like
yeah,
yeah,
so that's one of the other things I wanted to bring up that was in the interview, that there was specifically a question about the plans for professions, and
yeah.
basically the answer is we're happy with how professions played out. They're going to tweak some
Nice.
things with work orders specifically, but
Uh huh.
overall they're happy with professions, which honestly I am too. Like there was the
Oh yeah.
whole like figuring everything out at the beginning of the expansion, and then kind of like once we hit 10.1, everything kind of clicked into place, especially once we started getting stuff with like crests and things that all kind of
Yeah.
like fit together in one big piece. And crafting feels fine. Like I do all of our leather crafts pretty much in guild, and it just kind of works. Probably the biggest frustration is the altar of rot.
Yeah. For the pie. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think yeah. I think the only thing I would say about the professions, I think agreed. Good system. The only I think downside is like there's not a good catch up mechanic. And when I
yeah,
say catch up, it's like if you wanted to swap a profession to do something else like halfway through, you are just behind. Like there is
yeah.
very limited things you can do to catch up. And I think
On the other hand, one of the things early on is we didn't know what gear people would want. If
mhm,
you know specifically, like everybody wants slime boots, right?
yeah, then you
Which
can
is true.
focus on that. Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
focus on that, and it requires like a fraction of the amount of points, because you go in and you max out boot crafting, and you max out your elemental stuff and your decay stuff, and you max out. There's like one other thing that gives inspiration chance, and then you're good. You don't need to
Yeah.
max out everything. And so there's like that. Like you just don't need to max out the stuff to make the allied con pants or whatever they are. Because
Right. Yeah.
nobody wants those.
That's
Like
true. That is. I didn't think about it that way. That is true. Yeah. That you can then, if you do want to swap, you can target exactly what you want to make,
right,
like essentially. Or if you're going to do it to like sell things, you can target
right,
exactly what you know will sell or what people want. So
right.
that's fair. That's fair. Well, cool. Anything else from the interview or?
That's the big things that I wanted to cover. Is that you mentioned you had something you wanted to talk about? Was that the Warbound gear?
With the Warbound, yeah, the
Yeah,
Warbound stuff, yeah, just knowing the item level, I think was really, really good because yeah, like I said, I thought it would drop slightly lower than it was. So, well, cool. Let's speed run the rest of the news because there actually is some monk specific stuff we should
yeah,
talk about before we quit
yeah.
today. So, I'll just titles only. So 10.2.5 got a release candidate build. So the latest build earlier this week was tagged as release candidate for 10.2.5, which more than likely means we see that early or like probably like mid January ish, we'll say,
Yep.
is sort of what I'm thinking. So yeah, so probably like mid January, mid to late January, we'll see 10.2.5 officially launch, which is cool, which will bring dragon riding everywhere, which
That
is
will
sort
be
of like,
nice.
yeah, which will be a lot of fun. The other thing is, the other thing is they did post 11.0 to their encrypted CDNs. So we see the first build of 11.0. Now, honestly, all this means is that they're internally testing it, which we knew that 11.0 was a thing because they announced it. So
Right.
now it's basically probably more of an actual thing. Since yeah, once they put it on the CDN, typically that means they're getting people outside of like the individual development teams to start testing that like a wider audience at
Right.
Blizzard and etc. So, good news there. I don't know if Wowhead. I didn't actually read. Oh, they did do the date thing, where like yeah, the
They're
the release is
guesstimated
like
date.
yeah, so I think what is this like 220-ish days from this time? So what's that like 9-ish months if I'm just doing the math quickly?
Yeah.
10
Their
months?
their their guesstimate is July 19th, between July 19th and August 18th next year.
Okay, which is
So
end of Q3.
end of Q3.
Uh
Like you
which
get
would
that
be
Q3 bump.
yeah, which would be good for yeah, financials going and then going into Q4 you'd have probably the first content patch right around the holidays. Bring a couple people back in right before the end of the year. So yeah,
Yeah.
no. Probably in line with what I thought anyway. It was probably like end of summer
Yeah.
type release date when they announced it at BlizzCon. So um cool. All right. And then now on to maybe quickly, we'll see how quickly, some class tuning. So Mistweaver over so I guess it's specifically for monks, but Mistweaver has been the target, um and I'll say probably rightly so, target of some pretty not hefty nerfs, but just some general nerfs overall. So we got hit with a couple of nerfs last week, kind of around Manatee. The mana reduction was hit, and just generally, like our healing was reduced across a couple of spells. And then this week, with this reset, we got even more. So Unison was hit, went from 50% to 35%, healing a second ally. So there's a bit of a hit there. Enveloping Breath got hit with a 10% reduction. And then Essence Font healing again, because that was a part of the previous Nerf's Essence Font. It's got healing reduced by 8%,
That's
which
such
is
a.
like,
Does this apply? I asked this last time. Does this apply to stuff from Phalanx?
uh, I'd have to double check the actual spell IDs
Okay.
for what was changed.
Okay.
Typically though, when they do this, it's to the initial hit and the hot. And the hot in Phalanx does not have a different spell ID.
Okay. So it would
So
affect the stuff from Phalanx.
yeah, which is like not a huge deal because the Phalanx hit is just the hot application. It's
Right.
not the initial heal. So, and the biggest part of Essence Fund has always been the initial heal.
Right.
So
Which is that's a weird one to me. You guys don't really use Essence Font in
so
Raid
we
right now.
did actually. So with they
Okay.
actually buffed it going into 10.2,
Right.
and
So
it
you used
basically
it
became
sometimes.
well. If so, the way you'd use it, if you ran Upwelling, you'd use Thunder Focus Tea to trigger to basically do two things: trigger Secret Infusion because the Essence Font Secret Infusion is a haste trigger, which is really good for
Yeah.
the Rising Mist build. And then if you ran it with Upwelling, it's essentially doubled in power because you'd have a fully upwelled Essence Font
Right.
every 30 seconds. And then you would always pair this with the reduction from Mana Tea, because you generally always have Mana Tea charges. So it
Yeah.
became a very cheap, we'll say very solid
Basically
heal,
giving
Essence
yourself
Bond
a
did.
mini lust every 30 seconds. It doesn't
Yeah,
cost that much mana by using Mana Tea.
exactly. Plus, yeah, plus the healing that you can now spread using Essence Font Hots. Even though our mass, we don't typically stack a bunch of mastery, it's still more
Yeah.
healing, right?
Yeah.
That you can do. So yeah, so that was and sorry, it was also really good to feed into like the 4 piece because you get double mastery procs. Anyway, it was a solid one to hit. Yeah, with this nerf, like it's funny, Essence Font hasn't been on our bars until the start of 10.2, all expansion. On our bars, the start of 10.2 because it's a good spell to hit now, and then they've slowly like brought it down. I think you still end up, playing it with the Rising Mist build. Although the weird thing about Mistweaver now with a lot of these changes is there's probably like 5 or 6. There's basically like two in the raid, like two main raid builds. You either run Rising Mist or actually Tear of Morning you can run now, and then there's a bunch of like minor talents you can shift across the board.
Yeah.
So you can run like um, Focus Thunder, which is 2 Thunder focus charges, or you can run Life Cycles, right, which is more Manatee charges. You can do Unison or not Unison, and so like it's funny. There's a lot of things are very similar, and so there's really there's definitely some play style changes between each talent you build. So it's an exciting time to play
Slight aside,
Mistweaver.
when I was
Yeah,
talking about like the Archon stuff about wanting to spend more time on talents because there's a lot of interesting
yeah.
stuff there. Like this is the kind of stuff I was talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah. So
Exactly
there's a
what you're
bunch of
bringing up.
nuance. Yeah, and there's like a bunch of ways where you can play the Tom build and you'll play like upwelling centric build for like 6 of the bosses. You'll play, more focused thunder for 3 of them and like
Yeah.
playstyle changes between Tear of Morning and Rising Mist. So it's an exciting time to play Mistweaver. It sucks that we are like losing some power, but with losing that power, it's sort of bringing a bunch of our different builds in line with each other. So
Yeah.
if they just fix our mastery, man, like I think Mistweavers, we've been back, but like then we'd be awesome, and I wouldn't have to quit healing next expansion. So
Yeah. I mean, you said you were gonna quit healing when Augmentation Evoker came out. I'm kind of
I did,
doubtful.
man. Oh, dude, they just pull every dude. Blizzard has this weird ability to like make Mistweaver just different and interesting enough that like, oh well, I gotta play it, and then it's trash, and then but this time, this
It
this time it's
wasn't.
good.
It's not
I
trash.
know,
It's one of the best healers.
I know. It's actually been a lot of fun to play the class. So
Um, and then we also, not to leave them out, Windwalker's
oh
got a
yeah,
buff. And when I say a buff, it's actually like 8 lines long. What the
so
developer
many
note?
changes.
They got so many changes. I went and checked the Windwalker channels before the podcast. This is a 7.4% buff in Sims. So
Uh
this
huh.
is Spinning Crane Kick 20% damage, Blackout Kick 10%, Rising Sun Kick 8%, Fist of Fury 8%, Blackout Reinforcement, which is tier set, that's 250% instead of 200%. So that's a 25% buff to that ability or that buff.
Yeah,
And then Glory of the Dawn, which is that the double RSK?
believe so. Yes.
That one buffed by 12%. Dance with Chi buffed by 50%. It went from 200% to 300%. Like very sizable buffs across the board.
Still trash.
Pretty.
No, I'm joking. Actually, I think I read Babs's article on this actually.
Yeah.
Like last night, or was it last night or the night before? I forget when he posted it. Um, and I mean, at least according to Babs, Windwalker Extraordinaire, like this is, I think, with this buff plus the buff for the previous week, I think it's overall a 12% buff from like the start of these
Yeah.
hotfixes. Which from his point of view, I know nothing about Windwalker, but from his point of view, basically puts it average, right? Like that was like the lower bound of I think what the
Yeah.
community said Windwalker needed to be average and not sort of a detriment to your raid. So,
Right.
um, yeah, I mean, I think that's tons of new buffs for our Windwalker buds.
Yeah,
You know,
like so for reference, like the average, like the middle of the pack DPS right now, if you look at like Arms Warrior on Volcaros, this is pure single target. Doing this off the cuff, so I'm not looking at the more complicated boss. If you gave Windwalker a 12% buff, their median goes from 174k to you add about 20k DPS, so that's a 194. That puts their median, in theory, that puts their median up in the upper quartile of like specs with like the Death Knights and the Rogues. Now in practice, there's some stuff here that I feel like people aren't going to get the full value of the buff because
yeah.
there's like you need to play really well. So I don't know if you're going to see 12% buffs to the median. but that's still like if you get an 8% buff, that puts you actually in line with like the middle of the pack.
Yep.
So yeah, not bad.
No, that's really solid. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy for our Windwalker friends because I mean, I feel like other than Brewmaster, like the other two monk specs, like Mistweaver and Windwalker, are typically not on the up and up. Like
Yeah.
Windwalker for a while has been on the down and bad. I think even probably worse than the lowest points of Mistweaver, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's good to see them get some buffs here. And then, like I said, Mistweaver still, even
Like
with it's funny, even with
Mistweaver
the
has
nerfs
had
to us.
those has had those high points, right? When you got the
Yeah.
Backstreet Boys, when you had the haste build in
Okay, like
Nihilotha.
people, hold on. Okay, like let me just talk about this haste build. Just this grinds my gears because people bring this up. That haste build, literally, there was like 4 people in the world that got to play that,
Yeah.
right?
All
Like
right.
they,
Fair
it
enough.
literally lasted for like it lasted until that Mount log. What was that boss's name? Mount, right? The
Yeah.
the Mana Shield guy.
Yeah.
Until that log and video was posted, like that was like in week 3, I think, of that patch. Week 4, destroyed, like just Dunzo. So I mean,
I
like,
mean, but that still does a
yes.
lot. That still does a lot for the perception of Mistweaver's power,
Oh yeah,
which
no, that's
does
fair.
matter
That's
for
fair.
like being able to actually like get into groups, right?
That's
People
true.
people
That is
hear
true.
Mistweaver is OP and it did this thing, and then they maybe hear it got nerfed. But if it was like completely busted one healing mythic fights before and it got
Yeah.
nerfed, like maybe it's so good. Like they don't know that you needed this very specific set of corruption, right?
Yeah, you didn't know you needed like literally 400% knots. That wasn't that high,
Yeah,
but like,
yeah,
yeah, like a
yeah,
ridiculous amount of
yeah.
haste corruption to even make it work. So
But yeah, so they're in contrast with like Windwalker, where they were like kind of good that one time in Castle Nathria and then got
yeah,
nerfed,
yeah,
and then they had the spin to win in keys for like a tier and a
that's true.
half.
They were really good. What was that? That was BFA Mythic Plus, wasn't it?
They had the bonus brew spin to win in
Oh,
Shadowlands.
okay, and then Shadowlands too.
Yeah,
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 yeah. They had a couple of, I think, Mythic Plus runs, but
yeah,
but no, I mean, I think this is good for Windwalker to come back in because it's funny. I always put my Mistweaver hat on, and we've always been. Yeah, I don't think we've always. To be fair, we've probably been better than Windwalker over the past like probably 3 expansions if you aggregate it, which is,
yeah.
I guess it's not saying much considering like, yeah.
It's not really
Anyway,
saying much.
yeah, it's not like we've been better at 2 specific points, we'll say, and
It's
then for
okay.
like a
It's
week
okay.
once.
Monk's always been good because it's always had Brewmaster, and Brewmaster
Oh
has
my
literally
god.
always been good.
You know what? Here's my take, and I know we're well over time now, but my take is it's a mastery issue. Like give us a good mastery, and then we'll just be better. Like
Windwalker's had
stagger.
a good mastery.
I mean, it's like hit combo though. Like
Yeah,
it's not that good.
it's
I mean,
still
it's
just another
okay.
damage multiplier.
That's true. That's true. But stagger is like just deletes mechanics. I guess not anymore, but
Yeah,
I guess it still kind of does.
yeah. They've nerfed it plenty. Celestial Brew deletes mechanics though.
That's true.
Not as good as AMS. AMS is like Celestial Brew on steroids.
That's fair.
If you ever
That's
want to,
fair.
if you ever want to feel like what Brewmaster should feel like, play a Blood DK and push AMS, and just watch mechanics not happen.
That's fair. That is
It's
hilarious.
crazy. It's great. Like, did
That's
you know?
awesome.
So last thing, and then we'll wrap up. Oakheart in Darkheart Thicket, right? The
Uh-huh.
crushing grip that goes on tanks is like pretty scary.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I feel like a lot of people have had the experience of going into that and just like getting destroyed. And like I went into it. Blood DK is really good at that. Like you can hit Death Strike while you're up there, so you pull RP for it and you hit Death Strike and you don't die. It's great. Um, what I didn't know until this week, if you push AMS before the grip, it literally doesn't do damage to you.
Wow. That's fuck off.
And there's so many like Blood DK.
Yeah.
The fun thing about Blood DK, obviously there's Death Strike. Death Strike's a very fun button to push, but you just have like all these different buttons. Like IBF makes you stun immune, okay?
Yeah.
Lichboard makes you fear immune, and sleep immune, which sleep's very niche, but fears do come out. Like the third boss of Throat of the Tides, you can alternate AMS and Lichboard and never leave the boss.
That's awesome.
Like you've got AMS, which is just preventing magic effects, on top of being a huge shield.
Yeah.
You've got Death's Advance that makes you immune to pushbacks most of the time.
Yeah.
There's something
Which is like
up to it.
it makes Naimu such a joke.
Yeah. Like you can walk through, like you just, Blood DK is just a walking like
That's
you have
true.
all these very narrow but extremely powerful buttons, and figuring out where to put them to just ignore mechanics is just such a good time.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's just just rework Monklet like masteries. Give Mistweaver something other than another single target heal.
a
Like I
bunch
don't know,
of a
make
bunch of specs could actually use new masteries too.
make Chi Harmony our mastery. That's gonna be my 10.0 or
What
11.0
what if
beta
Manatee
feedback.
what if Manatee was your mastery?
What would no. What would it do? It's a button. We get it already for free. It's just a
But
button.
you could have really shitty Manatee, and then
Oh,
if you get
no.
mastery, it could become good Manatee.
Oh, like it gives me more mana back the more master I
Or
have. Like there's
or more mana cost reduction.
power reduction. No, I don't like that. Just give us Chi Harmony as our mastery.
I
That's gonna
don't
be
know what that
my.
is.
That's the four piece bonuses or 3 piece or 2 piece and 4 piece bonus. The buff you get
The
the
current
2 piece.
one?
Yeah, the current one. The two
Okay.
piece bonus you put on people is called Chi Harmony,
Okay.
and then the 4 piece distributes any healing after Chi Harmony explodes to anybody with renewing
Yeah.
mist.
Honestly, that sounds better than the current Gust of Mist.
Yes, yeah, it's gross.
So
So
anyway, that's gonna be it for the show today. Thank you all for watching and or listening. And if you enjoyed this podcast and you want to support it and the work that we do over on the Peak of Serenity, you can do that over at our Patreon, patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, come and join the Discord. It is the best place to meme on Anomaly for his tomato camera.
oh god, I bought a
Uh,
new one by the way during the podcast. Just
but
heads
anyway,
up.
during the con.
Yes, 100%. He's so angry.
Oh boy. But yeah, that is going to be it for the show today. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you maybe next week. Maybe next
We'll
week.
see.
We'll see.
Maybe.
Bye.
Bye.